Situation where we were told to stop something for a political reason, that would be a very big deal. It's not happened in my experience.
You've tuned in to Stranger Than Fiction News, broadcasting live from the dark side of the planet. You just heard it from the FBI director yourselves. Nobody has ever tried to stop an investigation of the FBI, certainly not the White House. That testimony was just a couple of weeks ago in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Now there's just so much to cover because we really should be talking about how this situation developed, how we got here. It's a long story, a beautiful story though. A story that should be remembered forever in American history. How the entire country was bamboozled by a bunch of no good troublemakers. How did we get into this situation, ladies and gentlemen? It starts way back in the day when the President of the United States tweeted something like, "I've been wiretapped by the Obama administration." And it came out with James Comey's testimony in front of the House Intelligence Committee that in fact they were wiretapping the president, that they were lying about it. They were reading a script. We can find the footage. This is where it started to unravel with the former chairman, Devin Nunes. But you had Comey right there with Adam Schiff, reading scripts back to one another. It was beautiful during the question and answering phase of the event. And it told the entire world that it was a sham, if you could read between the lines. And we want to play again the big leak out there on the Washington Post, the memo.
Department of Justice opposes a specific investigation. Can they halt that? So if the Attorney General or senior officials at the Department of Justice opposes a specific investigation, can they halt that FBI investigation?
In theory, yes.
Has it happened?
Not in my experience, because it would be a big deal to tell the FBI to stop doing something that without an appropriate purpose. I mean, oftentimes they give us opinions that we don't see a case there, and so you ought to stop investing resources in it. But I'm talking about a situation where we were told to stop something for a political reason. That would be a very big deal. It's not happened in my experience.
It's not happened in his experience. Nobody's ever told him to stop an investigation for political reasons. There you go. That's the big memo. That's the big memo from the Washington Post. That was his testimony just 2 weeks before he was fired. Fired by the president for being a very, let's just say, controversial FBI director. There's quite a bit of evidence that tells us that obviously there was some sort of conspiracy between the Democrats and the Democrats. You have to remember Comey was appointed by Obama. The entire system was being run by Democrats, run into the ground. And on their way down, as they were crashing in flames, they were covering up their crimes the best they could, stonewalling investigations, torpedoing investigations. But what's come out is damning. And we're still waiting for a special prosecutor to be appointed in the Susan Rice investigations, the Obamagate investigation, the Hillary Servergate investigation. We're still waiting to find out what happened. But what we do know is that as far as the DNC leaks are concerned, that wasn't an outside job. It was an inside job. The Russians had nothing to do with the DNC leaks. And so their whole story that the Russians did it is absolutely fake. Just like every other story that they've put out there trying to cover up their crimes is absolutely fake. There is no doubt about what we're dealing with here. Hardcore criminals. Hardcore.
Attorney General or senior officials at the Department of Justice opposes a specific investigation, can they halt that FBI investigation?
In theory, yes.
Has it happened?
Not in my experience, because it would be a big deal to tell the FBI to stop doing something that without an appropriate purpose. I mean, we're oftentimes, they give us opinions that we don't see a case there, and so you ought to stop investing resources in it. But I'm talking about a situation where we were told to stop something for a political reason. That would be a very big deal. It's not happened in my experience.
There you go. It's not happened in his experience. Nobody's ever told him to stop an investigation for political reasons. And that's his story, and he's sticking with it. I'm sure they never stopped the Hillary investigation for political reasons either. These people have absolutely no credibility. They're faker than the fake news, and the fake news is very fake. Not only do they not have any credibility, but they're suspicious. They're shady, suspected of many crimes, including murder, espionage, and selling U.S. information and services to the highest bidder, the pay-to-play. And worse, there are suspicions of pedophilia, like we saw in the Wiener case, sex crimes like in the Slick Willie case. Let's not forget Dennis Hastert, the Podesta emails. Many, many crimes here, ladies and gentlemen. And the question is, where's the special prosecutor? Now, many people have heard that they have nominated the former FBI director Mueller to head a special counsel on the president. Now, some people have mixed emotions about that. At least Mueller was appointed by a Republican president, but we kind of smell the skull and bones over there, if you know what I mean. So it's hard to say what the Mueller investigation will end up with, considering the whole thing is fake from the pretense. So how did Mueller end up being the special counsel? Well, Mueller was appointed by the Deputy Attorney General. The Attorney General, the deputy that was basically appointed by Obama, a holdover, ladies and gentlemen. And this was something that people were talking about as soon as Jeff Sessions recused himself from the quote-unquote Russian investigation, because it left an Obama appointee in charge of that investigation. And we were complaining about this right at the beginning, saying, you know, what kind of strategy is this? What kind of strategy is this? What's going on here? And obviously there are many questions as far as what is going on here, but all we can say for sure is we're much better off with Trump than with Hillary. There is no doubt about that. And I guess that's what we got to focus on right now. Do you want to let Hillary win the election that you already won in 2016, or do you want to see Hillary in prison for the crimes that she's committed all the way up until 2016? I think there should be a special prosecutor in the Hillary case. There are many, many, many things to be investigated. And I don't think that any of us can say that we live in the land of the free as long as Hillary is out there free, ready to strike again, ready to take out another staffer, or to rig another election or another primary or another debate, or to sell off more secrets and information to the highest bidder. She's a threat to national security, and everybody knows it. And nobody wants to prosecute this case. What's wrong with the world? How can we say we live in the land of the free, of justice, if we got things like this going on? Not only did the FBI director deserve to get fired, but all these people should be under investigation for their collusion in the cover-ups of the Hillary investigation. We know that the deputy secretary of the FBI, deputy director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, he got paid off by the Hillary campaign to the tune of $1 million just before he was appointed deputy director, at which stage he was overseeing the Hillary investigation, because of course Comey wanted to look like he was being impartial. So he gave it to McCabe, who had just gotten $1 million in a promotion from the Hillary campaign. Either we're all idiots or we don't live in the land of the free. Take your pick. Take your pick. Which one is it? We can't be living in the land of the free if we still got things like this going on. So there needs to be an investigation. Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, needs to appoint a special counsel into Hillary and the entire gang of criminals known as the Obama administration. And we don't say that with any joy. We say that because that's what it looked like. We don't have a vested interest in the duopoly. We don't think Republicans or Democrats are really opposing each other. They're just taking turns. Taking turns to strike at America. That's why they're all attacking this president. That's why you now have Republicans joining the chorus of Democrats. Just like they were joining the chorus of Democrats during the campaign. They wouldn't even support the Republican nominee. Republicans would not support the Republican nominee because it wasn't part of the Skull and Bones franchise. We can't be living in the land of the free if it's Skull and Bones versus Skull and Bones at Bohemian Grove, then going out to do some spirit cooking. This can't be the land of the free when stuff like that is happening. I think we can agree on those kind of things. So we don't have a vested interest in Republicans or Democrats, but we do find it peculiar that both Republicans and Democrats were against Trump during the last campaign. That's what made him a very attractive candidate, because all of a sudden the establishment didn't like him. I was like, hold on here. That might be interesting. And that has carried on ever since. It didn't stop at the inauguration. I don't know if people are drinking the fluoride out there or just are out of touch with their short-term memory. But what happened before the election has continued on after the election, and you've got the entire establishment, with the exception of a few deplorables out there. You've got the entire establishment basically bad-mouthing the president nonstop and his attempts to make America free again and to drain the swamp. Now, sure, it looks like the president, as a rookie politician, has made a few mistakes. Hey, I think that's what the honeymoon period is about. But you also have to realize that one of those mistakes was inviting in all of the snakes from the Republican establishment. What's that poem he likes to say? You knew I was a snake when you let me in. So that was the mistake, and now it's a snake's pit in the White House, surrounded by a swamp full of swamp monsters. It's a terrible place, Washington, D.C. Terrible. Full of terrible people. Just a huge mess out there. In any case, these people are all suspected of some serious crimes and collusion And it turns out that they were actually making more money from the Russians than Trump ever did. There were many representatives that walked away with lucrative payouts from various Russian interests. And so not only are these people liars, but they're hypocrites, as well as the other deals associated with Hillary and the gang, the uranium deal. It's just unbelievable, the hypocrisy, the lies, the evil, the crimes. And what makes it even more incredible is that there isn't an independent investigation being conducted on these crimes. Nobody's talking about it, except for maybe Sean Hannity, the one guy on Fox News that still seems to have a brain of his own, let's say. But otherwise, it's just complete silence. They're not talking about any of the crimes, the collusion. Maybe Lou Dobbs. We don't want to be mean to all the people at Fox, but you know, there's issues there. There's definitely issues there. In any case, nobody's talking about it. There's no investigation. There's no crime, apparently. There's no reason to worry. And just to make sure, they'll add a little censorship to the story. That way, reports like this one just won't make it out there to the vast majority of the people. Imagine if everybody on Facebook got a copy of this broadcast delivered to them right now, as they should. It would, people would freak out. But the vast majority of people will never see this broadcast. And that's the problem with the censorship. That's the problem with this quote-unquote net neutrality. They always call it one thing, but it means another. Like the Patriot Act. It wasn't about helping the Patriots. It was about getting the Patriots. We all ended up on their red lists, on their watch list, being surveilled, whether you knew this or not. I think some people just discovered their television was watching them. In any case, this whole system has been crafted against us. It's run by evildoers. And there's no oversight. Nobody's talking about it, and they're censoring everyone. Can't even get your message out there. But that's the 1984 Orwellian society that we live in. That's what it's become out there. So we're just looking to get the 90s back. I think that would be a decent start. We got the happy days stolen from us. But we'd settle for the 90s. And nobody really knows what's going on out there. What's up with these people that we see on television? We have a feeling there's something else going on. Most people have suspected it. So we're not sure what the situation is with the Imperial Masters or what their plans are. But somebody needs to explain the Georgia Guidestones. Somebody needs to explain the GMOs. Somebody needs to explain all this other stuff that we're seeing on television. Doesn't look like the Happy Days or Leave It to Beaver anymore out there. Looks like something else. Be nice to get an explanation for all of this. But they don't want to talk about it. They'll show it to you. They'll force you to watch it, but they won't talk about it. That's what's even creepier about the situation. It's like walking into the mental institution and trying to figure out, what everybody's problem is. I don't think you'd ever see your way out of that situation. So imagine walking into the nut house and say trying to explain to people what what's up with the chemtrails and the GMOs in Building 7. Obviously they'd give you that fluoridated stare, and not understand what you're talking about. And that's what it seems like out there. It really does. Seems like there's a few sane people walking around the nut house, and we're trying to explain to everybody, look, there's something wrong. And the crazy people are looking at us like they don't understand. So it's a very frustrating position to be in. And what makes it worse is you got like the people running the crazy house. They're crazy too. So like, say, you know, you go to the help desk and you're like, listen, I got some flyers I want to hand out, you know, to some of the people. I think there might be something wrong with the food, you know. And they just take your flyers and throw it in the trash. There's nothing wrong with the food. The pesticides are awesome for you. The GMOs, they're excellent. Tasty. Did you know if you put water in a microwave and nuke it and then feed it to some plants, they pretty much turn brown. People are cooking with the microwave. They're warming up their coffee now or their tea in the microwave. Try to warn people about, you know, what's going on out there, and they look at you like you're the crazy one. So that's what we're dealing with. That's part of the problem. That's what makes this situation so frustrating. Now, if you're just joining us, there's been some huge breaking news.
Or senior officials at the Department of Justice opposes a specific investigation, can they halt that FBI investigation?
In theory, yes.
Has it happened?
Not in my experience, because it would be a big deal to tell the FBI to stop doing something that without an appropriate purpose. I mean, we're oftentimes, they give us opinions that we don't see a case there, and so you ought to stop investing resources in it. But I'm talking about a situation where we were told to stop something for a political reason. That would be a very big deal. It's not happened in my experience.
There you go. So nobody's ever asked him to stop an investigation for political reasons, certainly not the President of the United States. Yet you've got the Washington Post, the New York Times, these radical left fake news organizations telling the American public otherwise. And they've been putting out fake story now after fake story for years. How are these people still in business? And they're in business because they've been propped up by billionaires. Billionaires of the radical left. Owners of these tech companies that are looking to put out Skynet. And yes, Skynet is coming, ladies and gentlemen. Skynet is definitely coming. And so these people that are bringing us Skynet, the Georgia Guidestones, all the gloom and doom, they're running the news and they're telling you what to think. Now, of course, this is what you would expect in the crazy house. This is exactly the kind of things you would expect. But the rest of us that are walking around out here, we're just like, that's messed up, man. So we keep trying to put out flyers and, you know, get the information out there for regular folks. That way they can kind of wake up and smell the coffee a little bit, have an opportunity to make their own decisions. But obviously, one day enough is going to be enough. And what I don't understand is the lack of action or the complacency in fighting this the way it should be fought. You know, it seems like they're still just kind of like poo-pooing around the gentleman's club. You know, we don't want to say anything too offensive. But I guess I would just, you know, lock and load here and just, you know, keep shelling out, you know, truth shell after truth shell. And, you know, place those those statements where they should be placed. And there's plenty of things to criticize. And I guess one of the things that I would say would be, hey, let's have a special investigation into Hillary, and just to make sure she doesn't leave the country, let's arrest her and detain her. Perhaps question her again and again. Even perhaps, just to be sure on Benghazi, perhaps we should bring her to Guantanamo a little bit and get some of those enhanced interrogation techniques going. That would be pretty interesting. They could leak some of that footage like they do with some of the other things we see on the internets these days. In any case, there obviously needs to be a serious investigation into what the left is doing, and now's the moment to do it. If this president, who's being totally attacked and betrayed by everyone around him, can't defend himself, how are we going to be able to defend him? Really? He's the president sitting in the White House, head of the executive. If he can't protect himself, what are we going to do? So we need to see some executive action from the executive, and it would begin by having Jeff Sessions recommend a special prosecutor in the Hillary Obamagate situation, not just rely on what Congress is doing, because their findings are just recommendations anyways. This needs to be official in the Department of Justice. Has to work its way into the court somehow, not just shown on C-SPAN. Right, that's just bread and circus. So this president needs to defend himself, and he needs to get serious about fighting the opposition. We all understand and respect his point of view for being a gentleman and doing the more gentleman type things, but sometimes, when you're president, you gotta man up to the situation. And this is a situation that America needs. We need the arrest of Hillary. We need new investigations into everything Obama was doing. And let's even have an investigation on Building 7. I think everybody has a suspicion about that one. If we weren't talking about skull and bones versus skull and bones types of crimes, with this amount of public outcry, there would have been an investigation. Had we all been, bitching about something else that was more casual and mainstream, there would have been investigations. But since this is dealing with the imperial masters, the ruling elite, and the Luciferians, then there's a little pushback. And that's understandable. I mean, what would you expect? And it is a very compromising situation to find oneself in. So you can't blame them for trying to escape. That's what criminals tend to do. They try to escape. But I think we have to at least attempt to at least try and apprehend the criminals. We have to at least give it a try. So why don't we give it a try and have a special counsel and perhaps some sort of prosecution in a court. Let a jury decide. Let's televise that stuff like the O.J. Simpson trial. America wants to know. Why can't we get what we want from time to time? Why do they come on television and tell us that this is what we wanted and they give this to us? Why can't we actually have a say in what we want? We should have a say in what we want as a people. Sure, they can make recommendations. Sure, they can do things that that cover the budget. But every once in a while, we want some things too. And we want investigations into Hillary. We want investigations into Building 7. And we want investigations into this Luciferian agenda that we're seeing everywhere. Because we know where there's Luciferian activities, there are crimes. That's pretty much a given. And the Luciferian activities we're referring to are the after-school programs, the television shows, and all of these people that are product placing dark-sided ideology. We want to know why this is happening on the scale that it's happening. Why they're, embedding phallic symbols in Disney cartoons. We want to know. We deserve to know. Because it looks like these Luciferians are up to no good. They're abusing their power, taking advantage of the American people, and victimizing us in the process. That's what it looks like.
Has it happened?
Not in my experience, because it would be a big deal to tell the FBI to stop doing something that without an appropriate purpose. I mean, we're oftentimes, they give us opinions that we don't see a case there, and so you ought to stop investing resources in it. But I'm talking about a situation where we were told to stop something for a political reason. That would be a very big deal. It's not happened in my experience.
There you go, once again, the former director of the FBI telling the world that nobody had ever asked him to stop an investigation for political reasons. And this, of course, is referring to the Comey memo and the insinuation that he was told to back off the Flynn investigation. It's just a bunch of hogwash. It's just a bunch of hogwash. And I think everybody sees that, but somehow the Washington Post and the New York Times are still in business. And that's because they run independently from any sort of real business model. They're not there to make money. They're there as a ministry of truth, or as some sort of institution that distributes propaganda. That's their purpose. That's why they're there. So this is something that needs to be looked at, because it's very subversive, and it undermines the will of the people and the mandate of the president. And it's a very concerning situation. We basically have traitors that are putting out lies constantly and inciting violence and radical ideas in the minds of unsuspecting readers. It's a truly disturbing situation. And there needs to be investigations into all of these fake stories on the mainstream news. It seems like the FCC regulates swear words, but they don't actually regulate fake news or misinformation that incites violence and hatred and irrational thinking. In fact, they promote it like they promote the spice. You can go pick up spice and bath salts just about anywhere. That's legal. That's fine. That's fine. You can go pick up some booze and get drunk and plow into a bunch of people on Times Square. That's more or less permissible. But talking about the truth and standing up for patriotism, that is not possible in our country. Investigating the criminals is not possible in our country. It's a complete sham, and I don't think we should have to stand for it. I think if we truly live in a republic or a democracy or in the land of the free, then sometimes we should get what we want too. We want to know why it looks like they're trying to get us out there. We want to know why these criminals keep just lying to us in the open. We want to know why these people are getting paid with our tax money and not doing their job. How about that? How about that one? We want to know. Where are these investigations? Why won't anybody investigate Hillary? Why won't the president investigate Hillary and defend himself? Imagine all of a sudden the cameras turn back to Hillary, and it's Hillary in court having to face the music for her crimes. Oh, they would all lose their minds. But how about that? How about that for a change? How about justice gets done for a change? How about at least there's an investigation and full disclosure on these situations? We know what's going on. We know what's going on. They can like bury their heads in the sand and pretend like they don't have to deal with it. But we know what's going on. And every day that goes by that they just keep pretending, that basically discredits the institutions even more, and it insults the rest of us that can clearly see what's going on. Now, we're not asking for Nuremberg trials and execution and life in prison. We'd settle for walling up these sanctuary cities and letting these Luciferians live out their lives in tranquility in their own domain. Just as long as they leave the rest of us alone, we can go back to the way it was in the 1990s. So I think that's what's really stopping the truth from coming out, is the fear of these people going to prison forever. And obviously our system is a bit draconian, especially when you compare it to other countries. It's like, since we've privatized prisons, they figured out they can make money on sending people to prison longer. And that just messes up people even more, because when they come out of a 20-year stint for jaywalking, they're messed up, So the whole situation needs to be looked at with, proper support and long-term strategies of rehabilitation. But nobody is looking to send these people to the gulag. We would just like to know and get on with our lives. That's all we want. That's all we want. Now, obviously, it's a very complicated issue that way, because you'd have to change some laws and you'd have to drain the swamp, and it just seems like we'd have to get one thing done before the other thing, and so on and so forth. So eventually there has to be kind of like an icebreaker, like a big kind of thing, and then everything can settle, like just to shock people a little bit, and then everything can kind of settle down. So I think that event should be the arrest of Hillary Clinton. I think we should see that breaking news here pretty soon. Will it happen? We'd like to see it happen. Just breaking news, Hillary Clinton arrested, detained, charges filed. You know how they used to raid people, and you'd see it on the news, the people were raided for fraud or embezzlement or something like that, and the FBI would show up, and it'd be like, people in suits and ties being arrested, thrown into a limo and never seen again. That kind of thing. I mean, that's what we need to see. That's what we need to see, and I think that will cheer everybody up to begin with, and it'll give this presidency the breathing room it needs to start restructuring the strategy and perhaps some of the personnel. But there needs to be a huge change here. Otherwise, this is just going to drift into stalemate all the way until the next election cycle. And time isn't in our favor. The demographics change every day, not in our favor. And every day that goes by, they get a little closer to rolling out Skynet. So time is not in our favor. We can't just sit by and watch this soap opera play out, episode after episode, just to find out at the end of 3 or 4 more seasons here that we've wasted our time and they've done nothing. Enough with the bullshit, as they say. And let's get back to doing what's best for our country. And obviously the president would be doing that if it wasn't for these these people in Congress and in the media obstructing not only justice but the will of the people. So these are, these are other domains that need to be investigated. Because obviously the collusion doesn't stop with the White House, the media, or the FBI. You've got many members of Congress involved in this silent coup. And that's what it is. And so there needs to be, perhaps even a bit of a purge, mass arrests like we saw in Turkey after their coup. I'm not sure how many people remember the Turkey coup. But right after that, after the president, made it through, there were mass arrests of all the traitors, for better or for worse. I think the Turkey situation's a little different, but let's just use that as an example. That was a solution that seemed to work. Mass arrests. And I think most people would be happy to see Maxine Waters, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi thrown in a prison with Hillary, and let them face some sort of prosecution for their crimes. I think it should be a serious offense to be elected into office and do nothing. It should be a serious offense to be elected into office and sell out the American people. That should be a serious offense. That should be 10 to 20 easy. $500,000 fine. That makes sense. But there isn't a law like that. They don't do what they're supposed to do over there. If they were doing their job, we wouldn't have to do what we're doing. We could all be doing something different, like enjoying every single minute of every day. And I think that's part of what this bread and circus is about, is that they want us focusing on this soap opera that's playing out on CNN and the New York Times and the like. They want us focusing on the soap opera, so we're not focusing on the bigger picture, which is, fulfilling our mission out there, evangelizing, waking people up and doing the right thing in that cause. And that's something that we explored with the Kent Hovind interview that we did a couple months ago. You can find that still on our website, front page, stfnews.com. But those are the kind of conversations that we should be having with our friends and neighbors and young people. We should be talking about how we should be making our society a better place, a safer place. But instead we're focusing on all of these evildoers and what they're doing to our country. And I guess that's the nature of this show. I mean, a lot of people like the news. They like to see what's going on. So there was that niche to fill. But the majority of people, are basically spending their time on distractions versus what the mission is. And the mission is stated clearly right there in the 10 Commandments. I mean, you got to read that stuff literally, not what and not go by what other people are doing. Many people are missing out on the whole idea of blasphemy these days. They're missing out on what graven images means. People used to worship the sun, the moon, and the stars. And you're seeing those images everywhere. Go read your commandments. People are missing out on what the mission is. And our purpose is to worship, believe it or not. It seems kind of difficult to say these days. That's the mission statement. And we're we're not focusing on that as much as we should be, because these evildoers are trying to pollute our world, our lives, every which way they can. And they keep lying and making the world a terrible place and pushing us towards World War III, and this is absolutely unacceptable. So there you go. I mean, that's common sense for you. I think we'll leave that broadcast there. Again, be sure to check out our website, stfnews.com. It's one of the better news scanners you'll find out there. Something's happening in the world, you'll see it there, and you'll get plenty of interesting information from people thinking just like you and me. So be sure to check out that website, stfnews.com. This is Stranger Than Fiction News, wishing you and yours the very best. And if you're listening to this, you are the resistance.